joining us today. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to this webinar that is put together by BNet Learning. Just to introduce BNet Learning, it's a professional education center, and we exist to provide world-class training services to individuals, institutions, and organizations. And we are a consistent source of relevant knowledge needed to thrive in this highly competitive global market. We boast a robust team of highly skilled facilitators, and you'll be listening to one of them today, Sunny. Our trainers are skilled professionals, and they have experience in their field. Our online training and classes are engineered in a way that enables us to support the learning process for every individual. So, what are we listening to today? We're going to be talking about Agile. Agile is a buzzword that you hear, it's become quite popular, but it is an iterative approach to project management and software development. And it's in its popularity, big corporations are adopting it to deliver both products and services. So yeah, we've decided to put this together so you can listen to our facilitator, and he will tell you a little bit more about Agile. He will also describe to you the camp that we have that helps you to become much better at leveraging the Agile system. So who is Sunny? So Sunny is, he works as a program manager. And prior to this, he worked in a consulting firm as a project manager too. So he does have the experience in using Agile for projects. I've introduced Sunny. What I forgot to do is introduce myself. My name is Tosan Chigo, and I am in charge of operations at BNet Learning. I've been with BNet Learning for a little over 4 years, and I can tell you that it is a team of people who are committed to adding value to everyone. So without much ado, let me hand over to Sunny so he can take you through that. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat, and we will definitely get back to you before the presentation ends. And if we don't get back to you before the presentation ends, then we'll follow up with you. Thank you. Over to you, Sunny.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for introducing me to Sen. Nice to meet you all, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to basically share with you all today and give you a little bit of a flavor of what you can expect as part of this training program that Tosan basically talked about. But before we jump deep into it, it would help if we basically have a round of introductions with everyone, just so I get an understanding of your backgrounds, if you want to share your professional backgrounds, and something on your personal side as well, whatever you may choose to. But the emphasis here would be on the professional side, just so I have an understanding of where you are in your career at the moment and what kind of an experience you've had so far in terms of project management in Agile space, et cetera, et cetera. So on that note, I will just pick the first person that I see on my screen, and then we'll just do round table. So I see Cami Sandhu. Do you want to just introduce yourself and then please pass it along?
Yeah, Sunny, I think the ability to speak is actually disabled. So if people could write in the chat, just introduce yourself briefly, just yeah, sorry about that. If you just tell us where you're dialing in from, and if you have any experience with Agile.
Okay, so while people do that, I can, in the meantime, give you a little bit of a background for myself. I basically happen to have a background in IT, finance, and accounting. Just happened to be the trajectory of my career. for the last 8.5 years or so, I've basically ran programs for the provincial government within the space of banking, basically building digital applications. Prior to that, I've been a commercial banker myself. And then in the space of building applications from a program perspective, I've been a Scrum Master, I've been a project manager, I'm now a program manager. I've had the privilege of basically working very closely with business units and collaborating with stakeholders pretty much globally in terms of getting the work accomplished for our teams. At the present moment, I happen to be working for a consulting firm, basically building digital applications as part of COVID when everything basically shut down, delivering against the government's initiative of making government more efficient and also providing services, digital services to service providers that basically help with moving heavy duty loads across the province of Alberta and basically in Western Canada. So that is the program initiative. And then again, working with a very diverse team. And just an FYI for everybody, people don't already know that although we have come out of the COVID protocol, these teams right now that I'm working with are basically all fully remote teams. So, and what we are striving for is something that we haven't seen in any government initiative. So this pilot program that we are running is a program that's being very closely watched by other provinces in Canada. And once the implementation is done, this basically could actually be accepted and incorporated by other provinces. And on that note, I am not seeing a whole lot of information coming in the chat here, other than from Folashide. You're transitioning into the IT space, good to know. And then we have Samson basically transitioning into the business analysis space. Okay. Not even sure. I see some other people here. Sure. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you, son.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it seems we only have Folashade and Samson reaching out to us, and they're both in the same space of transitioning. So that's
Gotcha.
Samson says he's always operated from an agile mindset. Maybe you could just tell us what, for the sake of everyone, just tell us what the agile mindset is about.
I'm not sure, Tosan, if Samson has the ability to speak. Maybe he does.
Yeah.
I'm not certain.
I can actually, hold on, Samson, will you be willing to share with us what you mean by an agile mindset? If you are open to it, I can, if you just type yes in the chat, then I can unmute you if you're able to speak. Okay. Let me see.
Hello.
Okay. Hello,
Yeah.
Samson.
Yes, please. Yeah. So I've always been operating from an agile mindset by saying that I've maybe from what I do, I work as an accountant in the maritime space, and it's a very fast moving environment. So because of that, most of the tasks I work with, even projects like IT related projects, I am usually more comfortable when the design is such that we could measure our progress in a timely fashion and in not so lengthy phases. So I'm always coming from that point of, okay, let's build this phase, see the outcome, see whether it's still relevant with what circumstances around the industry and what we do. So that's why I say that I'm coming from an agile perspective. It's been a culture around it. So that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Samson. Okay, back to you, Sunny.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Samson. I really appreciate that perspective. On that note, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move forward here and start basically sharing with people as to what you can expect and what basically agile is a little bit about, and then what basically I've observed in my years of experience is basically from what Samson just shared is something around the lines of growth mindset, right? Now, there's a very specific reason I chose this picture around growth mindset, agile mindset, and transformation. Uh, in my personal experience, what I've observed is even though you might be working in the project management space, program management space, or even as a scrum master, when you go into this space of agile, there's a lot. Like Tosan earlier mentioned that this is a buzzword being used right now in the industry. However, what we forget to understand is that agile just doesn't happen overnight. It's a cultural shift for an organization. It's a cultural shift not only for an organization but the people within the organization, because at the end of the day, what drives organization is the adaptation of people to change and their ability and an understanding of what they need to do and have that growth mindset in order to drive innovation, new processes, whatever that looks like. Now, what I have also observed, which is where one of the biggest challenges for myself comes even to this date, is when people that talk about agile, or from a leadership perspective, executive perspective, they want the organization to go or become more agile, but they themselves are not aware of how agile actually works or what does it mean to be more agile. And hence what they keep proposing in a circle is the same old traditional methodology of project management, or doing things the old way that it's always been done. And then yet they are looking for outcomes in an organization that are more drive towards innovation, change, higher productivity. Yet their understanding of that itself is not is basically incomplete, right? So, for example, I would say just within this past week, one of the organizations that I basically work with, we were actually having a discussion about, hey, how do we make things more agile? Where can we use agile in our business processes? And how do we drive that change mindset for the organization? The funny part was, in a group of about 30 people that were there for this discussion, about 4 people understood agile, um, but the discussions were driven by people that were part of the traditional project management theory space, um, and also there were people that, from an executive perspective, that did not really have an understanding of agile. So what happened is, even though the 4 people, that one of them was myself, as we were driving our point across of where the new sphere for the organization should be, how do we basically get to that next stage? What is it that we need support from the executive team? What is it that we need support from the people and peers that we work along with? What we found was, because of that knowledge gap and that cultural shift that's not really happened in the organization, people kept honing back to what they were already accustomed to. And although they wanted better performance, better KPIs, more innovation, they were not having that change in that thought process, which is why they kept going back to that same old theory. Now, change is a very uncomfortable thing for any one of us, right? I would say a large part of the role as folks here become, you strive in your IT careers to be project managers, program managers, scrum masters, wherever your career passions lie. You are going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to be that person, and organizations, depending on the size of the organization or even the size of the team, even this your direct executive leadership team, you may be asked um, time and time again to drive change in the organization, to drive change through your teams. And the reason why that is the case generally is because a lot of the organizations, and I'm one of the examples right now, as I'm putting myself on the spot, is when change is happening, change will never happen at a very large scale, right? If an organization starts getting comfortable and trying to bring about change in the organization, generally they want somebody to lead that charge, to actually prove to them by executing efficiently that outcomes can be achieved, and the mindset of the people uh, evolves or has changed for the better, and that the final outcomes that they are driving or achieving um, are more productive. And what they use that is generally as a way of kind of putting a business case together, if you want to call it that, so that they can convince other areas of the organization to head in that direction. And certainly, this is not my first rodeo. I've done this a number of times in my past experience. But what you will realize is um, you have to have a buy-in from somebody, generally an executive at an organization, who is going to vouch for you, and you always need somebody up at that level to basically help you drive that change. However, what you need to do is you need to also show outcomes. So one of the things part of Agile you'll learn is Agile lets you fail fast, learn fast, change and adapt, so you're producing outcomes. I say these words very carefully. Failing as part of Agile is not that you don't have an opportunity, but you can't continuously keep failing because people start losing faith in you, and then off you go from the track of bringing about change in the organization. Um, and then what that leads to next is you're losing pretty much trust for yourself in the organization, and hence what you start noticing is your voice that might have mattered a lot prior to you doing that exercise doesn't count as much. It doesn't carry as much weight anymore, right? So you want to be careful, and I'm saying this very cautiously because I've been on both sides of it, where I have actually failed miserably as well, and I have actually delivered programs very successfully as well. So I understand where you're coming from. I will definitely say having the right tools, the skill set, and basically spearheading it with, I would say, confidence, not overconfidence, but confidence in yourself. Because I can certainly tell you, as you start going down this path, there are going to be people that are going to challenge you in ways where it'll put your thought process to question your own abilities. It's happened to me. I've seen that happen to my peers. And hence, you going back to your basics, having that confidence in yourself again, that, hey, I have the right skills, I have the right tools to be able to do my job, and then having conversations. People are probably the most important part of this all. Agile is not going to just bring about change overnight. It's buy-in from people, finding more efficient ways of doing things, continuous improvement and driving and striving for that at every stage and showing the outcomes to your executive leadership teams is a very good way to get a buy-in from people. And if you get a chance to do that, I would always jump on that bandwagon. Some of you might hesitate at this point in time. I would say that I was in your shoes, number of years ago. But when I started realizing that I was actually the leader driving the change in the organization without executive leadership being fully comfortable with it, you start understanding what kind of value you bring to the organization, and you are actually looked at from a perspective of driving value for the organization. So you're a very important tool in terms of outcomes for the organization. And as part of this specific course, I want to be able to equip you with not only just the theoretical part, because you probably have theory. You can watch, a bunch of YouTube videos to grasp theory, and people talk about a lot about it in terms of like how to do things, etc. But it's actually about doing the practical things right. That's what I would cover as part of this specific program. Then when we basically start the session. So far, I'll pause here for a moment. I've shared a lot of information out. Does anyone have any specific questions that come to your mind, or that you have in your mind that you want to talk about or discuss? If you do, and you don't have an ability to speak, I would encourage you to please put it in the chat, because I'm monitoring the chat myself here. And if there is anything that specifically comes up, I will be happy to address it. Did someone come off mic here for a moment? I believe I saw somebody's unmute themselves. Did you have any question? I'll pause now.
If you have any question and you're able to speak, let me know, and I will instruct someone to unmute you. Yeah.
Okay. If not, I'm monitoring the chat while I'm kind of like also to share some more insights. But please, we will have time for questions. Both put them in the chat. I'll monitor it, but I'll keep sharing more information. Again, as a project manager, scrum master, or a program manager, what you need to understand is first the cultural mindset of the organization and their adaptation to change. This will only happen when you have conversations with people. You understand if you find resistance, which you almost guarantee will. There would always be people who are willing to try things out, and there will be people that will question like, hey, we have done these things for so long, why do we need to change now, right? Probably one of the most scariest questions that I've encountered in my life is where people have said to me, we've done this has worked for us, why is there a need for change? And or when you find yourself in a situation like that, you are the one that has to provide that information to the folks, and your answers will matter, because that is one opportunity for you to actually get a buy-in from those people, or you're going to just distance them further. So understanding as to what their resistance is for the change. Why is it that some people are pushing back, and sometimes you will never be able to get a buy-in from them. But what will happen is, if let's say there's a team of 10 team members, and you get 7 of them to buy in and 3 are on the fence about certain things, what you need to do is, as you execute your project further, there are tools that you can use to ensure that the performance that you're looking for people that even that haven't that are on the fence about things, you can work with those people in spite of the fact that they're on the fence. And those are the tools that we will kind of look into and talk about it in this course. And what you do is, once you start showing outcomes to these people, they'll start buying in. Gradually, they'll come on board. But what they need to do is, in the time being that they are on the fence, you just need to hold them accountable for the things that they're assigned to or the responsibilities they have. So we'll talk about those things as part of this course. Um, you got to understand what the current methodology in the organization is. I have been told, and I'm doing it, a lot of the organizations are very traditional project management organizations, simply implying there that they do things in a very traditional manner. Um, a lot of the organizations have changed that. I wouldn't, I have yet to come across an organization, because I haven't worked for a startup yet, where things might be absolutely agile. There is no traditional project management. But what I have worked mostly so far, and I've observed in organizations, is there's a hybrid approach. Certain aspects of the organization run in a traditional project management. Certain aspects of the organization are practicing agile. We bring the two together. Now, the approach there that we use is, even the folks that are doing the traditional project management, we get a buy-in from them when we try and incorporate methodologies of agile with them. But we got to always respect the fact that you will not be able to convert. You can try, but it'll take time. But you might not be 100% successful at converting all of the traditional project management space that the people work in to a fully agile space. So you got to respect individuals and their experience in the space that they work in, but then kind of get a buy-in from them to work in this new manner. And again, as you get people to buy into this process and you're showing the outcomes, you will be surprised how fast this other area of the business that's been traditional will start changing its processes to adapt to the new process. So again, it comes back to respect for all team members as to where they are in their current space or career, and making sure that you're showing outcomes to these people and working with them and adapting them into the new process, and then showing them the outcomes to get buy-in from them. Now, what we also want to kind of look out for is an optimized and sustainable flow. And what I mean by that is, if you are working for a business unit which has its own current process, and you go in there and you're trying to help them be a little bit more nimble, agile, more efficient, if you are making their processes by any stretch of imagination more complicated than they already are, you're going in the wrong direction. What they need to see is an optimization of their processes with a sustainable flow, simply meaning that different business units have different time flows of the year where they have to scale their processes up, and then they have to either scale their processes down. So I'll give you an example. If, let's say, you are working for a business unit called Amazon, Amazon is a busy organization in itself. What you're gonna have to keep an eye out for is, during the months of, towards the latter part of the year, say from September to December, more so between November and December, their ability to be able to do their business, which is, shop online and be able to deliver. And I'm just talking specifically about like their their shipping business purchases online, they have to probably ramp up 4 to 5 times of their regular capacity to be able to then deliver the outcomes that they would in a normal cycle of the year. Um, Although during COVID, that normal scale has gone up, what you need to understand is that your flow of processes that you're referring to should be able to match that capacity that the business is expecting. And if you're able to continuously show that you can optimize your performance based on the demand, that you can scale up and scale down, um, that really has a huge impact um, in whether an organization wants to go down the path of making an adaptation for an agile process and for a change versus they just keep doing things the way they are. So always having that mindset of continuous optimization and sustainable flow is really helpful. The third aspect that I talk about is encourage team innovation. And what I mean by that is uh, most solutions in an agile space are basically formed by team members. And what I mean by that is you take a set of problems and you give that to a group of people in the organization, and then you ask them to solve that problem. Now, what you're going to soon realize, this is always in the initial phases of the organization, because I've been part of the transformation journey where with an organization that we were very confused for about a year and a half, trying to figure out what is it that the organization was asking off of us? What is it that our expectations were to deliver? Because all we were told was, hey, let's try and be more agile, have an open mindset, and you kind of go ahead and execute against that approach, which I would say majority of the organization was confused because there was no communication or clear communication about what does agile really mean? What does being agile really mean, right? So people are trying out their own things, etc., while the organization was trying to figure out its own culture before we kind of got it right. But one thing we kind of kept coming back and we kind of learned was during this journey, and I've seen that at other organizations as well, is that you don't need to bring in external consultants and or solution architects to solve business problems. The people within the business units, different business units within the organization, when organized in an optimal manner, can actually produce results, right? It might be a slow outcome, but as long as we are driving outcome that is helping drive innovation in the organization and be more efficient, you can capitalize on it and then move forward. So one might come back and say like, okay, well, you might have people in the business units that do not understand certain things or are not technically skilled with certain aspirations. That is so true. What we try and do at that point in time is we do take a little bit of and although this is not often seen, but we try and get people to learn about those areas themselves to drive innovation in the business. Now, certain times you will notice that, you know, if the business people are all, I'm just going to put it out there, from a finance background, we need someone like from a development standpoint that needs to do the work. Totally understandable. What we do need to still think of it from that perspective is that you do need that the team needs assistance, and identifying where the team needs assistance and bringing the right tool set to that team to be able to have that solution created. This is on the program project management space. This is where you kind of come in as an expert and you identify where the bridging gaps are and you fill that gap. But you're always encouraging the team to basically still build the skills within the team to drive that culture or innovation forward. And which is what I meant by that most problems are basically solved by the teams that we put together. So always have that in mind as you're putting your teams and resources together. You bring a good mix of group of people together that will actually help you build out these new solutions. And then one other thing I kind of focus on is this focus on relentless improvement. And what I simply mean by that is we, at this point in time, you always have to drive towards improving things. Yes, you may fail and as part of like delivering a set of iteration. And what I mean by that is, you're running a sprint, and the outcomes that you actually thought you will achieve within that sprint are not the outcomes that you're able to achieve in that sprint, which will simply mean that you have to try one other iteration. Even if that is the case, you should be driving towards what that final outcome is. Even though you might not have achieved the goal, but you ought to be able to produce or get closer to your goal every iteration, and that is important. That as a program project manager, scrum master, is your primary focus for the organization, because that's what's driving value for the business unit. And since that is driving the value for the business unit, you got to be like steadfast in your approach to not losing sight of it at any point in time, and then just move forward with that approach. Now, with that, I'll pause here for a moment. Does anyone have any questions pertaining to the information I shared?
There's a question from Samson that he had put in quite a while ago, but it's
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm just getting to it here. So for someone with an IT, accounting, and finance background, how was your adaptation to agile mindset like? From an onset of your career or a particular environment you found yourself working, enhance the adaptation? Yeah, okay, that's a very good question. Thank you for that, Samson. So for myself, I would say, when I basically joined the organization that I uh, basically drove these initiatives in, um, right off the onset, as I kind of came in because I had an IT background, um, I looked at some of their processes on how we were doing commercial banking, which is banking at a very high scale, with a lot of stakes, and maintaining some um, very high value client relationships. Our processes were inefficient. Our clients were always turning to us and saying that as we make business decisions, and they would give us enough information ahead of time, we were still not meeting their timelines in a timely fashion, and or when we were moving funds for our clients, there was a lot of pivotal errors that would actually happen in the system, which would then stop the release of funds from reaching the client, and leading to not just impacting our business, but you're now impacting clients' businesses, uh, them losing out on contracts or not being able to meet their financial obligations or debt obligations, and then that effect in itself leading to other penalties from like the vendors, other penalties from business units or governments, etc. Right? Um, it was a very inefficient process, and from the onslaught, when I kind of got there, I think it was within the first couple of months I started identifying to my leader to say, like, there's got to be a better way of doing things. We just need some encouragement for us to kind of start looking at some of those solutions. um, and it was a mindset that I had, was of just improving the existing processes, making life easy for your employees so they can do their job more efficiently, and then they can serve their clients. The mindset simply was that if we can give our employees a little bit of time back in their day, they can actually have better relationships with the clients, and help them come up with more optimized financial solutions, rather than just be a transactional approach to the business. Um, and hence, when our business started doing the transformation, I was actually informed that I would actually be part of the transformation team, leading charge from the programs and project perspective on in different areas of the business, and that kind of got me started in the agile space. And we were at the cusp of starting with agile, because prior to that we had just done traditional project management, which was not really innovative. It was just, the answer always was, we do things we do this way, and it's always been done this way, so we continue to do it that way. But no one really questioned as to why we do certain things a certain way. And as we started getting into this new approach of Agile, we started questioning to a large scale pretty much every process. We basically questioned the need for it, and as part of that process, you'll be surprised how many inefficient processes we were able to just literally drop from our existing processes because it just didn't make sense for us to do. And what we found out was, as we kind of started eliminating these processes, we started freeing up our resources on our teams, and it did not have any legal or financial repercussions with our, existing clients, with our other financial institutions that we had relationships with. Nobody really came back to question. And once we observed for a certain period of time that was not having any impact on our business, we really started scratching our heads to say, how many more such processes do we do on a day-to-day basis that don't make sense, and start questioning those processes to make things better for the business unit. So I wouldn't say that I was, from the onslaught, I was a more agile person, but I did certainly look for efficiencies in the process of the work that I was doing, and then just adapting to kind of agile, and then getting started. So I hopefully answered that question. But if you have a follow-up question, please feel free to put it in the chat, and I'm happy to address it. Anyone else? Do you have any questions? Okay. So Tisan, I'll kind of keep going forward. And in case there's a question that pops up, if you want to just pop in and just stop me, I'm happy to kind of take that on then.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you. So I've done this prior, and I just put down a little bit of an agenda for what you can expect as part of this program. And at a high level, I've just explained some of the things, but I've also kind of been very clear about setting some of, like, giving you a flavor of what you can expect. So I want to start by saying one thing though. At any week where you see this asterisk, that's basically a practical hands-on class. Okay, so you'll notice that in week 2, week 3, week 4, and week 5. There are parts of week 1 that are going to be hands-on as well. But because there was theory involved in this, I just didn't put that asterisk there to set wrong expectations, but have an understanding that you probably are going to start working on the tools in week 1 as well. Okay. Now, by far, I would say one thing. Please have an understanding that, as I mentioned earlier, that you are going to be looked at from a leadership perspective, someone who is driving change in the organization. You have to get very, very comfortable with the approach of, if you're working either a hybrid model or remote model, to be on camera and have a conversation with people. It is a must. That's the only way we are able to build trust in this virtual world. Some people have questions like that. We can do it without on camera. That's fine. It works for you. I encourage you to be on camera. I encourage you to speak up. An ability for you to communicate clearly and be articulate in what you're conveying is of primary importance, because majority of the work in this role is communication. So I encourage you to do that, and we will practice all of those things as part of this course. So as you notice, like week 1, we have agile principles. We'll talk about like a project scope, prioritizing projects. We will talk about the delivery approach of, Scrum, Kanban, hybrid, when to apply what, where, what is right for what business model. We'll talk about the different ceremonies. We'll talk about governance structure and key performance indicators. We will also introduce you to software tools like Miro, Jira, talk to you about setting up the project, backlogs, epics, and user stories. Keep in mind, what I have noticed in my years of experience is that the tools that I've mentioned up there, are probably the most um, integrated tools that I have seen organizations use. So we'll kind of get you comfortable with that. I must also add it's Miro, Jira, and Confluence. And I've talked about here Confluence fundamentals in week 3, and we'll get into that. Um, week 2, we basically talk about team norms, ways of working, and value delivery. Um, this is very important. You need to set a benchmark, and I'll be setting that benchmark with this team, provided you kind of start the course with us on how we're going to work with each other. What is your expectation out of me? What is my expectation out of you? Because once you define that, it just makes things easier as we kind of go through the course. And where, if there is a bridge in the gap of like what we have set in the document and what we are delivering, if there's a gap in that, we should be having conversations. You will actually have an opportunity at the end of each week to give feedback uh, to myself or feedback for the process, so that when we come to you to deliver that the following week presentation and knowledge sharing, that we pivot based on the needs of our students. So week 2, we basically talk about what's the definition of ready, what's the definition of done, what capacity planning looks like. How do you even do capacity planning? Sprint planning, execution, review, retrospectives, and then organizing, prioritizing backlogs, refinement sessions, estimating effort, and then what is value delivery? How do you drive value for business units? Week 3, we will be looking at Confluence fundamentals. We'll take a deep dive into Jira plus Confluence for effective project management. And then we'll kind of get into JQL query language. And the reason why we do that is because uh, certain times you will go into an organization where you will be provided these softwares, but that you are also the admin. So if you need, and most of these softwares need to be accustomed a little bit to meet the needs of the teams, the programs that you're running, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important to have a little bit understanding of a technical knowledge, and this is not like really complicated stuff. So we want to expose you so that if you need to adapt your systems for certain specific requirements, you can do that. Um, Fourth is introduction to Smartsheet, which where we basically talk about what the work breakdown structures look like, the Smartsheet views, how you can view your project, Confluence charts, et cetera, managing dependencies, and then how are you basically able to generate reporting in Smartsheets and then report to against your KPIs to leadership. And then last but not the least, in week 5, I just basically summarize as projects. And what I mean by that is, we'll talk about project brief, meeting simulations, delivery plans, and schedule. We'll talk about project artifact creation. Projects basically have different stages. So, origination, what's the project proposal, initiating project charter, planning, communication plans, work breakdown structures, project schedule, basically executing, monitoring, and controlling, which is basically done through decision log, change request forms, change request log, risks and issues log, and then closing the project, which is basically transition plan to the business units, and then training. And at that point in time, you will also have a take-home real project, and then you will be asked to present back to the class on your project. Now, what I've excluded from here is getting into too much exercise conversation about story mapping, you know, building the roadmaps, etc. Although not on here, those are all the things we'll be covering as part of our 5-week program that we're going to get into. Um, and you will actually be required to do a lot of this work. So there will be week on week, there will be assignments that you will actually have an opportunity to take away, work upon. If you have questions, I'm going to be here to answer those questions and address any concerns. Um, but I'm just setting that expectation that um, active participation, getting comfortable with providing information where required, providing your input when asked to do so, or even in a free forum, is a primary and of utmost importance for not just yourself to get an understanding of what you are here to learn, but also giving an opportunity to others to learn from your experiences, and then learn from other people's experiences simultaneously. So this is at a high level what the program will probably look like. Nothing is set in stone. Just like anything else, I am pretty flexible, nimble, to shift things around. But I think this is a good start. And if we find out that, hey, people need help with one aspect more than the other, then I'm happy to be jumping in and pivoting as required. So that's all I had on my end in terms of the presentation. I'm opening it up to any questions, concerns, comments from anyone else.
Thank you so much, Sunny, for that. I think, yeah, transitioning from traditional project management to Agile is something that is really quite popular now. And it's actually, in my opinion, is a better way to work. So yeah, especially with the growth mindset. So really love that. I will be putting in the chat the link that directs you to the class that we have, and if you want more details on that. But we'll leave it open for questions. Once again, if you're able to speak, if you indicate in the chat box, then I will unmute you and then you can speak. Okay, we're not getting any questions on the chat box. That should mean that Sonny was very good in explaining and there's no questions. But just to remind you that we're just a DM away. We're on all social media platforms. Okay, Samson does have a question. So yeah, it is. Let me just open the page. I think I can share my screen at this moment. Let me just share that so that you can also see that. Yeah. Share my screen. So it is 2,000 Canadian dollars. Let me. Business analysis. Okay, I'm having some issues sharing my screen. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to put my email in the chat box. If you could please just send me an email with any more questions. Samson, I will get back to you with the details of that course. I can provide you more details on that course, but yes, for now it is priced at 2,000 Canadian dollars. If we have no more questions, I would like to thank everybody for attending this. Thank you so much, Sonny, for your time. And if you go to our website, there are more details there. You will also find there which of the social media platforms you can reach us on. So thank you everyone for joining and have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Sonny.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.